This is Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. I'm Nancy Solomon. Tonight we'll talk about the newly minted state budget, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Listeners, what questions do you have for the governor? Call us with your questions at 844-745-8255. We'll also be reading your questions off social media using the hashtag AskGovMurphy. The number again is 844-745-8255. And we're joined now by Governor Phil Murphy. Good evening.
Nancy, good to be with you. Remote for the first time, I think, since the dark days of COVID, but good to be with you.
Yeah, well, I got you on the screen. That's as good as it gets tonight. And how's your summer going?
Knock on wood, going well. I mean, the weather has been a real challenge and sadly has led to loss of life over the past couple of weeks. So I'm hoping we find our way out of this vortex. We've got a flood watch tonight through tomorrow morning for 11 counties. So we've got another night of pins and needles. But other than that, the shore is booming. New Jersey is in good shape. I just met with all the rating agencies on Monday. They agree with me. Not perfect, obviously, no place is, but so far the summer is going well.
Okay. And as I mentioned, you did pass what is your last state budget, right? You're done with this chore now.
I hope, although my treasurer, Liz Moyo, always reminds me that
the shore is booming.
We had two budgets. So this was, even though it's our 8th year, it was our 9th budget, but I'm hoping it was our last. Yes.
So you have fulfilled your promise to fund public employee pensions, which was a looming disaster when you first took office. You increased education funding again, and seniors are going to get a truly significant property tax break. So that starts out with this half of the calendar year, I believe, right? Like for property taxes paid from now till December.
Right.
So you feeling good about this?
Yeah, what you've just said, I feel really good. We inherited, I'll give you a number which even I find shocking as I think about it. We inherited a budget when we got into office with a surplus, which for folks wondering what that means, it's basically your rainy day fund of just over 400 million. And the budget I just signed has a surplus of over $6.7 billion. And that includes full pension payment of $7.2 billion. We put $47.2 billion into the pension system during our administration, which is, to say it's a record understates the case dramatically. We fully funded public schools. We fully funded property tax relief programs that have been promised. No budget is perfect for sure, but if you look at the journey from where we started to where we are today, we have come a long way.
You know, I think some of this stuff kind of tends to people's eyes gloss over, or for a lot of people, it goes over their head, like what's important about a rainy day fund. And of course, you bring up often the bond rating that that you've been able to improve the bond rating for the state. So, you know, these are kind of like deep in the weeds fiscal issues, right? But try to give it a go, explain it to people why this matters, why it's important.
Yeah, it's a great point, because if you're not careful, and I'm as guilty as anybody, a lot of this stuff can seem very abstract. So I do think people understand in their bones a full pension payment and fully funding public education. I think those speak for themselves, particularly in the latter, when we've got and just recently ranked again as the #1 public education system in America. But the reason why a surplus matters, the reason why a bond rating that's up and not down matters, in the first instance, particularly with all of the chaos in Washington, and with cuts to Medicaid, to food stamps, to reproductive care, to DEI programs, you name it, having a nest egg. Think of this as a family with a home but with some equity in that home, knowing that there may be some bad weather coming. You feel like you've got something you can lean on. And that's why that surplus matters, particularly in a chaotic world that we're in. The bond rating matters because the higher the rating, the lower the interest rate that we pay on our outstanding indebtedness. And that goes right back to taxpayers' pocketbooks. So the higher the rating, the more money taxpayers save. And we inherited a state, again, 11 downgrades. We've had 7 upgrades. It'd be nice to get a couple more before we leave. I'm not sure we will, but that's literally pennies or dollars rather into the pocketbooks of taxpayers.
Listeners, we have lines open if you'd like to call and ask your question of the governor, 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-8255. So, of course, there has been some criticism of the budget. For one thing, you took funding, $45 million worth away from nonprofit organizations that work on opioid addiction, providing harm reduction services and other things. This is money that comes from the legal settlement with the pharmaceutical companies that pushed opioids. And the money until now has funded like small community-based groups who use good, effective methods for fighting addiction. Even Attorney General Matt Platkin has spoken out against the transfer of these funds. And now that money has been shifted to give it to 4 large hospital chains in New Jersey. So what do you say to the folks who are really upset about that? And that came on the last day, right at the end of the process before the public could really respond. So what do you think of this?
So on that last point, Nance, I would like to fix the end of the process as much as anybody. And I think the legislative leadership, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think they would say the same thing. Most of the process works really well. And 99% plus or minus of the budget, where it landed on June 30, is where it got presented in late February. And then through hearings and meetings, most of which are public. But the very end of the process, every year, I think we rightfully take a good amount of incomings. I certainly do, for the last sort of couple of percent of the budget. And that's something I'd love to think we could fix as a state, because the rest of the process, I think, really works well. On this one, this was not where I would have landed, honestly. A budget is a compromise. And you're trying to compromise with 2 important legislative chambers. I bring to the table my priorities. They bring their priorities to the table. This is one which was not a priority for me, but again, any budget is a compromise, and that's just the nature of the beast. I am a big believer in and both, and that's something I hope that we could continue to visit or revisit, I guess. In other words, I think to say that the harm reduction industry and those nonprofits do an outstanding job is an absolutely accurate statement. It's also accurate to say that hospitals are at the coalface of a lot of opioid-related emergencies. So it's not as though you took money out of the system into something which was completely disconnected or unrelated. But having said that, I understand the concern. I believe and both is the answer. But I'm open-minded to continuing to make sure that we maximize our efforts. We've made a lot of progress based on evidence-based steps and programs that we've funded over the years in terms of opioid addiction and reducing the number of fatalities. I just want to make sure we continue to make that progress for sure.
You know, I take your point that it's not like the money was transferred into something having nothing to do with addiction or healthcare. But I think a lot of people are seeing this as a giveaway to the politically connected. Cooper Hospital in Camden is run by George Norcross, the party boss. RWJ Barnabas employs your former chief of staff and your pick for the temporary Senate seat, George Helmy. The other 2 are also big politically connected players, Atlantic Health and Hackensack. So, how are people supposed to trust this process and the system if money is going from the small nonprofits into these, very politically connected organizations.
You'll forgive me. I don't want to repeat what I've just said because it wasn't the way I would have landed this. But again, it's a compromise, and we need to be able to do that. By the way, those hospitals are also nonprofits, number one. Number two, they're 4 of the top healthcare systems in the country. So this is not like, with all due respect to the politically connected piece, which is irrelevant for me in whether or not the money is well spent or not. These are first-rate institutions. I do think, and I've committed to this, and I've spoken to Sarah Edelman, our great Commissioner of Human Services, about it. We want to make sure that taxpayers know, and most importantly, folks who care deeply about opioid addiction and doing something about it know, that we're gonna track every one of those pennies of the $45 million to make sure that it is spent exactly on the opioid addiction crisis that we, like every other state, are still living through. Even though it may have gotten better, we're still well north of 0 fatalities, sadly, and every one of those is a precious loss of life. We're going to track that money, and I commit to folks that we will track it closely and make sure it's being spent the way it should be spent.
Okay, let's go to the phones. We have Linda in Hamilton on the line.
Hello, Linda.
Hi, Governor Murphy. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. First, I just wanted to thank you for being the most pro-education and pro-teacher governor New Jersey has had in decades, from fully funding our pension to the preschool funding you just solidified for our state for years to come. That's a huge and significant difference to the families of New Jersey.
Thank you.
My question is, thank you. My question is about the break-in service pension bill that has been passed through the Assembly and the Senate. There's a few hundred of us, and took a small break to, yes.
Sorry, I lost you there. The pension break bill.
The pension break-in service bill.
Yep.
And so there's a few hundred of us in the state who started our careers in Tier 1, took a break, usually to raise families and things like that, and were penalized for this when we returned. It was Governor Christie was in, and all of those changes came in through the State Department of Treasury. But a bill, all these decades later, has been put forth to right this wrong. It's passed through the Assembly and the Senate with flying colors. And so we are hoping to hear that it will be signed by you in sometime in the near future.
Okay, Linda, thank you for that. And I will ask our head of policy, Dennis Zebeloff, to give you a call within the next 24 hours and just give you a sense of where we are on that. I typically don't comment on bills that have not that we've not completely and thoroughly reviewed and made a decision on. So you'll forgive me for speaking in conceptual terms, but conceptually, we clearly care about pension fairness. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we put in $47.2 billion into the pension system in our time. That dwarfs, I think it dwarfs every other governor in history combined. And it's something like 6 times everybody else. So we clearly believe in pension fairness. The notion of taking a break in your career to raise a family and then going back in, that's not a unique path. It's a path that a lot of folks take, including a lot of educators. So there's nothing but sympathy on that front. So bear with us. Again, I'll get Dennis to follow up with you, and bless you for being an educator in what is the nation's #1 public education system.
Okay, thanks for the call, Linda. And let's keep with the phones. We have David in Weehawken on the line. Hey, David.
Hey, David.
Hey, Governor Murphy, longtime supporter here.
Thank you, man.
Really quick, I'm someone who lives in Hudson County. I use public transit very often. I follow the congestion pricing saga for quite some time, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask, do we feel what would you say to someone who felt like it would have been better off to get a deal with Governor Hochul to get at least a portion of the proceeds from congestion pricing? Been paying that for 6+ months now and see a lot of the issues and deficiencies with NJ Transit. Kind of felt like played hardball and ended up with nothing there. What would you say to that?
Well, I'd say very specifically that we offered time and time again very reasonable deals. And the MTA, really the MTA more than the state of New York. I've got a very good relationship with Governor Hochul, but the MTA were in cloud cuckoo land in terms of the deal that they were willing to settle with us, and we were the reasonable partner. So the impression that you've got, whether it's, again, I'm not, perception is reality, so I'm not blaming you for having it, but the notion that we played hardball and weren't willing to find a common ground to do a deal is not accurate. We were and by the way, we were and remain willing to sit down and do a deal that is fair. But the deal that they jammed down our throat, our commuters' throat, is not fair. And by the way, this is a financial play. This is not going to do much for the environment. It's displacing the pollution to North Jersey. And to your very good question, Dave, we asked very much for a bucket of money to address that pollution. So they weren't willing to do any of the above. We're still in court. In an entirely separate matter, the Trump administration is in court. And by the way, our legal ask is a simple one as well. There is something called an environmental impact statement. It takes a while to do, 2 or 3 years. But at the end of the day, it has all parties at the table, all considerations. And I have said, let's do the EIS, is what it's called, to the Biden administration and now to the Trump administration, and we'll live with the results. And I would reiterate that today. So we've been the reasonable party here, but at the end of the day, even if you're the reasonable party, sometimes you have to take legal action, and that's what we've done.
Hey, thanks for your call, David. And now we're going to go to what kind of questions we've gotten on social media. We have David Matau of WHYY and WBGO with us. Hey, David.
Hi, Nancy. How are you?
I'm
Hello,
good.
Governor.
Hello, David.
You're looking great, by the way, on the Zoom. Very, very impressive looking shirt. Governor, Maddie from Cranford says, Governor Murphy, I've questioned this before, the use of flashing lights on vehicles that are not emergency vehicles. It causes me to wonder if it's a police car or an ambulance, and then I pull over, but in fact, it's a landscaper or some other non-essential, non-emergency car. I would like to see these lights made illegal and violators get ticketed.
Yeah, so Maddie from Cranford, Tyler Jones is with me tonight. Maddie, let's get Dennis Zeveloff again to follow up with Maddie. I think they are illegal. I think you can apply for exemptions, but other than that, you've got to be basically a first responder or emergency vehicle. I don't doubt Maddie's the premise of her question, but yeah, I'll have Dennis follow up with her. But I think there's a very narrow, if my memory serves me here, there's a very narrow remit in terms of exemptions that can be requested or gotten. And I don't think landscapers are on the list, even though I have a lot of time for landscapers. I don't think they make the cut there.
Well, could it be? I mean, I take that to mean there are lots of trucks that have yellow lights on the top of the cab.
Yeah.
Not the red and blue ones that the police have. So could it be that that's where the confusion comes in?
Could be. Could be. I'll have Dennis follow up with Maddie, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
But the notion of somebody, the real concern would be, and I think, Nancy, your clarification is getting it. The real concern is somebody, you see this, by the way, in places like Moscow all the time, where black sedans have like police lights that they literally the driver pulls out from his beside the bucket seat and puts it on the roof and pretends to be a policeman. So that is not on.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be taking more of your calls. I'm Nancy Solomon. This is Ask Governor Murphy.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? You can call us at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Or pose your question on X or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
I'm Nancy Solomon, and we are live with the governor. A lot of transportation advocates aren't happy about congestion pricing, and we've just discussed that. But I thought you might be happy to talk a little bit about some events this week that are actually going to make transportation advocates more pleased with you, I think. You had an event yesterday where you had a groundbreaking for the Greenway. That's the pedestrian and bike trail that'll go 9 miles from Montclair to Jersey City, much like the High Line. So before I move on to tomorrow, tell us about that. How's that going? Is there money for it? Is it ever going to really happen?
Yeah, no, there is money for it. At least certainly for the first mile, which for a number of reasons is the most expensive mile of the 9. But it's a really cool idea. So we bought up abandoned rail bed and rail track from Norfolk Southern Railroad. And this is just as you described, Nancy. This will be at the end of the day, and the end of the day could be 5 years from now, a 9-mile kind of a version of New York City's High Line, which is only a mile and change, connecting 8 communities, right, as you rightfully said, from Montclair to Jersey City. The piece that we unveiled yesterday was in Newark. And it's going to turn what was a blighted, dangerous, kind of no man's land stretch into something really special. Walk, bike. It'll help our environmental resilience. Great opportunity for folks to engage with other communities that they may not normally engage with. In other words, from one of those towns to another. Just really, really special. That mile, I think, will take about 1.5 years. So it'll get finished after I'm out of office, but 1.5 years is not a long time in the overall scheme of things. And then we'll keep stapling. Unlike a building, say, where you can't move into the building until all the floors are done, people will be able to enjoy these mile by mile as they get stapled on to the whole corpus.
I just came up with a great idea for what your next job could be.
Please.
You could raise the money and build the support for that rail trail that goes to Jersey City from Montclair, Newark to Jersey City for a over the Hudson River pedestrian bridge into Manhattan that connects with the rail trail. How great would that be? And you could do it. Cool. You could do that. That could be your next job.
You could skirt the congestion pricing tax as well.
Yes, you should get a rebate on your congestion pricing bill every time you cross that bridge.
Exactly. If I know the MTA, they'll try to put a toll at the other end. But in all seriousness, this is a huge deal.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Really, really special.
And then tomorrow, also good news, you're signing a bill. I think you're going to be in Maplewood to sign a bill that's related to pedestrian and bike safety. Tell us about that.
Yeah, in your hometown at 1:00 in the high heat of what will be July 17, signing a bill with, by the way, members of the legislature, but also importantly, advocates, including some of the same advocates I was with for the Greenway, I might add, like for instance, the Bike and Walk Coalition as an example, but also far more importantly than any of those, and they're all important, families of folks who have paid a huge price with the loss of a loved one or injured loved one. This is a bill which will mandate that as part of your driver's education process to get a driver's license in New Jersey, you'll need to be schooled up on how to deal with pedestrians and cyclists in terms of right of way, best practices, etc. And we've had far too many. The Gaudreau brothers, quite tragically last August. Some other victims that will be with me, the families tomorrow. and this will be a nation-leading step in the right direction. Our fatalities this year, I'm happy to say we've already put in a huge effort on this front, are down meaningfully, but a little bit like opioid deaths, down meaningfully does not mean you're at zero. You're north of zero, and there, any loss of life is a tragic loss. And so this bill is a big step in the right direction.
Well, and I think I have brought up this before sometime in recent months, but I think like the missing piece in driver's ed and driver safety is that the test is too easy. And I've now been through it twice with 2 teenagers recently, and it's crazy how easy that test is. They don't even leave the parking lot of the DMV. So I
Yeah.
think I want you to pay attention to that too. If you could just take a
do you
little
mean
word from me.
Do you mean the written or the road?
The road. The road
okay.
test.
Yeah.
It's just they drive around a big, huge, empty parking lot. Anybody can do that.
Yep.
They should be out showing that they can actually navigate in traffic without killing somebody.
Yep.
So my 2 cents. Let's go to the phones. We have Judy from Morris County on the line.
Hey, Judy.
Yes, hi. Hi, Governor. I moved back to my home state of New Jersey a few years ago after 30 years out, and I'm impressed as an older adult now, all the things going on, including senior property tax relief, which my family has really needed, because they bought a house that was $15,000 decades and decades ago, and it's the only way to stay in your home these days.
Yep.
So related to that, I'm asking about accessory dwelling units, if that made it into your budget.
Yes.
I understand that was great.
Yeah. I am there's still at least one piece of legislation that has not yet come to us that we need, but I'm a big, first of all, welcome back, Judy. Good to have you back in the state. Secondly, the property tax relief programs generally, and specifically for seniors, have been a big priority. So even putting aside for a moment Stay NJ, which will come into being in January, the Anchor program has now for several years already had a nice top up for seniors. And we're very proud of that, and it's clearly working. So the accessory dwelling units, if folks don't understand that term, it's basically to take a space over your garage or an attic space and essentially allow you legally to lease that, rent it to a family member, a third party, but basically is a way, on the one hand, for folks to be able to maximize the utility of the space they have, and the other hand, I think more importantly, for folks to find a reasonable place in this crazy hot housing market that we're in, with a huge supply-demand imbalance, to be able to find a creative way for somebody at a fairly reasonable rate to get the space they need to live in. I love it. As I say, my colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe there's a bill that still needs to get to us, but we love the notion. We've talked about it in our speeches, State of the State or budget, and God willing, it'll come into existence sooner than later. So thanks for asking, Judy.
Thanks for your call, Judy. I've been getting a lot of emails from housing advocates since the budget passed a couple of weeks ago. There's a new, what people refer to as a mansion tax, a new tax on housing sales for houses that sell for more than $2 million. And folks are unhappy that revenue is not going into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that it's not revenue dedicated to increase the supply of affordable housing, that it's going to bring in, did I say this already, $300 million a year. So is that something that you're open to changing and making sure that money gets spent on affordable housing?
Well, we are spending it on affordable housing, and this is, I think, and there are folks out there who I have a lot of time for who see this differently, and I will admit that up front. And I think there are 2 legitimate schools of thought here. One is that says pure production of affordable housing units is the only thing that matters. And I mentioned a minute ago, we've got a huge supply-demand imbalance, so you can't argue with that for sure. The advocates will suggest that it's plus or minus 200,000 units short, and that's their view, that every dime that has anything to do with affordable housing should go via the trust fund into production of affordable housing units. I think it's a very legitimate view. There's another set of folks who, and I have sympathy with this group, and our budget sort of acknowledges that sympathy, that affordable housing relief can take different forms. Certainly, production of units is one of them, and we still do a lot of that. But I'll give you an example of a program that we think is a game changer, which is assistance, down payment assistance for first-time home buyers, which I think is a very worthy and proven successful program. It's particularly successful and proven in Black and brown communities and families. So that's sort of that's been the bigger debate, I think. Not so much do you dedicate those revenues. Those revenues are general fund revenues, and I don't think that's going to change. But the bigger debate is staking out the two positions, neither of which are wrong, but there's an and both on the latter one, which I have some sympathy with.
Okay. Let's go to David Matau, who's keeping track of questions coming in on social media. David?
Thanks.
Hi,
Thank you,
David.
Nancy. Hi, Governor. Christine from Neptune Township says, Governor Murphy, could you please, you or someone on your team, please look into the safety of freight train crossings in New Jersey? I noticed that in Monmouth County, they do not have bars that come down like the NJ Transit train crossings have.
Okay, I'm in Monmouth County, by the way.
That's a new one, by the way, that question. After
I
8
don't-
years. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, we don't have many more shows to do here, folks, and that's the first time I've gotten that one. By the way, first time I got the flashing light one as well, I believe.
That's true. Yes.
Christine, you know what? That doesn't sound right. It's, I think, news to me. I'm going to ask Fran O'Connor, who's our terrific commissioner of the Department of Transportation, to give Tyler, if you can help me out, get Fran to give Christine a shout within the next 24 hours. Let's run this down. I'm curious as to know what the answer is myself. And living in Monmouth County, there's one train track, literally, that I think I cross every day of my life, which is right near my house. And they're all over. Monmouth has got a lot of them. So, Christine, bear with us. We'll run this down. I'll ask Fran to give you a call, and we'll take it from there.
My show director says, are you talking about the train lines that go from Fort Dix to NWS Earl?
That's a good question, actually.
I have no idea what I just read to you. So let's keep moving here.
Just a real quick, that's military.
Uh-huh.
So that's what your producer is referring to, and that may well be what Christine is asking about.
Okay. All right, let's go back to the phones because we got lots of folks who want to talk to you.
Okay.
Let's take a call from Josephine in Highland Park.
Okay. Hey, Josephine.
Hello, Governor.
How are you?
I'm fine. Listen, I found out today that last week on July 8th, 25 workers were kidnapped by ICE at Alba Wine and Spirits in Edison, New Jersey. This was a raid, an ICE raid. They stormed the warehouse while the workers were taking a break. They released dogs on people and hunted them down. Longtime employees ran and hid, and many have since been fired. And so we would like to know, we would like to ask for your compassion and your mercy and your will to protect these people and all of us actually from these masked, unidentified men who come to kidnap us.
Yep. So Josephine, I'm aware only probably at the level that you're aware of what happened in that incident. I don't have any insights into that specifically. I will ask maybe Kate McDonald, who's our chief counsel, to give you a call, and we'll go through what we know. But what we know, I think, is plus or minus probably what you know. And this is a time of, I mean, with Nancy and I have talked about this over the past 6 or 7 months. This is a time of enormous anxiety. And I do not blame folks for 1 second for being anxious in this environment right now. We continue to operate under what is called the Immigrant Trust Directive that was put into place by my first Attorney General, Gabriel Graywall, in the year 2018. And it uncrosses wires that people cross either deliberately or accidentally or unintentionally, I should probably say, quite regularly. In other words, crossing the wire of immigration status with criminal justice. And the Immigrant Trust Directive screams out, we care about tracking down criminals. That's our first order of business. Our first order of business is not their immigration status. It's whether or not they've committed a crime and bringing them to justice. And it has been very successful. It's one of the major reasons why we are one of the safest states in America. CNBC literally yesterday ranked the highest quality of life states in America, and we came in at number 3, the only state with big urban centers, and public safety was a big part of that. On the other side, if you're in this country and your status has not been clarified, immigration status, and you commit a serious crime, we're not going to stand up for you. Or if your immigration case was adjudicated negatively and you're still here, sorry. Or you had a tourist visa, you've overstayed it. Again, we're not going to be standing up for you. But if you're not committing a crime and you're here innocently, at least speaking on behalf of New Jersey and law enforcement, that's not any reason for us to go after you. We're going to go after you if you're a criminal, if you've committed a crime. And that's job number 1 for us.
You know, Governor, your staff has been sharing the questions that you get on your text line where people can text you questions, and you get a ton, like hundreds and hundreds of questions, and they're interesting. And I noticed, I was reading through them, and I think we'll get to a few of them in this last segment of the show, but I was reading through them, and you hear this over and over and over again. People want, what are you going to do to protect New Jerseyans from ICE? And I feel like there is, you acknowledge the anxiety, but I think people want you to do something. They want to see you out front doing something about this.
This, honestly, Nancy, first of all, I don't know that anyone has used the bully pulpit as much as we have on this topic. The Immigrant Trust Directive, by the way, I can say this because it wasn't my idea, is a brilliant notion that is unlike any state in America. There's one element I didn't refer to, which is if you are someone whose status is unclear.
We're going to have to come back to this. I'm sorry. We got to go to a break. I promised to start with this. This is Ask Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? You can call us at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Or pose your question on X or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
I'm Nancy Solomon, and we are live with the governor. And so going back to this point that people want to see more from you on immigration, I'll just read you. This is a question to you directly on your text line. What are you doing to protect New Jerseyans from ICE? And what safeguards are you putting in place to protect democracy? And that's from Rita in Ridgefield Park.
I would love my team. Tyler, let's get maybe Emmy Kispe to follow up with, is it Rita?
Rita in Ridgefield Park.
We're doing a lot, man. I don't think any state has sued the Trump administration more than we have. It's possible, but not likely. As I mentioned before the break,
Attorney General Matt Platkin, right, is what you're talking about, the suits that he's
and he's
filed.
done a hell of a job.
Yep.
In some cases, on like birthright citizenship, we let it. We personally, Jeremy Feigenbaum, literally personally argued that before the U.S. Supreme Court. So we either join or lead. We use the bully pulpit aggressively. The Immigrant Trust Directive, what I was about to say before the break, is one element of that is particularly powerful in keeping our community safe. And that allows someone, even if their immigration status is murky, to approach a member of law enforcement to say that person over there is the bank robber or the murderer or the rapist that you're looking for, without any fear that that innocent person's immigration status would put them into harm's way by doing so. The other side of it is, Nancy, there's only immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility, putting aside whether we like or don't like all that's going on. And again, if it's anything in and around innocent people, including, by the way, a shocking number of people with either green cards or even passports who are freaked out by all this anxiety. You can imagine how I feel about that. I've spoken, in fact, I've gotten in trouble for speaking so bluntly about it.
That is true. Do you want to talk about that?
Not particularly, but it is not our responsibility. It's not the lane that we're in. It's just not, it's a federal responsibility. So we're going to stay at it. I want people to know we're going to stay at it. Yeah. This is not the America that I sort of associate. I think we all sort of associate with as the ultimate immigrant nation, the beacon on the hill, Ellis Island, Statue of Liberty, all the stuff that we've grown up thinking, that's America. This is a shock to the system, to say the least.
You have something related to that. I read in the New York Times that you hosted an event at your home for Barack Obama to speak with Democratic Party donors. Sounds like it got a little spicy. You want to talk about that? I mean, because it's part of the same thing of like, what are Democrats going to do to fight the Trump administration is basically the overriding topic here.
I don't know where the quote unquote leak or quotes came from. I think it came from
him.
I think it came from President Obama.
Yeah.
So with that assumption, I will say that it was an incredible evening. It was other than taking pictures and shaking hands and whatnot, it was a one-table dinner of about 20 of us. Raised a lot of money for the Democratic Party. Every dime of which raised will go into the governor's race this year, by the way. Mikey Sherrill was there and was terrific. Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Ken Martin, was there. And a lot of really committed supporters of the party, donors were there as well. He was in great form. He made those points. We got to be tough. I think the phrase no more navel gazing. I think
stop
was on his list.
navel gazing and stop whining and get tough.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you think about what he said? Do you think that the Democratic Party is doing a little too much navel gazing?
Yeah, he first of all, he's in a position to know a lot more than I do for sure. I love the guy. I work for him as an ambassador. Yeah, he's one of the few people I've ever met where every thought that comes out of his mouth, whether you agree with it or not, is tied down. It makes sense. And so again, he's a lot closer to this stuff than I am. But there's probably some truth to it, Nance. I mean, there is a lot of who shot John going, a lot of which way are we going, and he probably listen. He's forgotten more about this than I know, but it was a fascinating discussion.
I'm kind of curious how something like this comes together. I mean, was this you and Tammy's idea and you asked President Obama, or did this come from the Democratic Party? Like, would you host this thing, or how did these things happen?
This is largely my wife because she is a renowned fundraiser, among other things, nationally renowned. In this case, the Democratic National Committee came to Tammy and said, we're going to do one. The president is going to do one event in greater New York, the tri-state area this year, and would like you to host it. And he knows you, and we've got a close relationship with him for a long time. So it was their ask. It was not our idea, but we were thrilled to do it.
And is that because is that because they've identified Mikey Sherrill's race as like the current priority?
I think it's a combination of knowing that Tammy wouldn't let them down, that they could raise a good amount of money, and very much the fact that this is one of two statewide races in America this year: governor of New Jersey, governor of Virginia. And they're big fans, as I am, of Mikey and of her prospects, but they know it's going to be expensive. So I think it's a combination of all of the above, including the president having a comfort level. I don't want to speak for him, but a comfort level with us and knowing us, etc.
He knows that you're a good cook.
He knows
he'll get a good meal.
He'll get a good meal. We had a good meal. I will admit to that for sure.
Okay, let's go back to the phones. We have Robert in Jersey City on the line.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, how are you, Governor Murphy?
I'm well, sir.
I'm a longtime supporter and calling you from Jersey City.
You there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
You can't hear him, Governor? I hear you.
I can't hear Robert, no.
Uh-oh. Can we fix that? Should we go to another call, or
you want to repeat what he said, Nance?
He didn't get very far.
Okay.
Robert, are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
Beautiful. I'm an executive for a nonprofit drug treatment agency, and I'm not going to talk about the $45 million. We'll let that sort out how it goes. But my question is around the lines of this state, as other states, are going to get decimated by federal cuts, suspension of block grants, Medicaid cuts. Our industry has spent decades building together a beautiful patchwork that nobody can go.
I assume the question is, what are we going to do about all that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Robert. The governor can't hear you, but go ahead and answer what
the question is. What is the state's strategy? I know.
So Robert raises something that it took longer in the program than I thought. I wanted to raise this earlier myself. We signed the budget, putting aside stuff that may have happened at the last minute. The fact of the matter is we had to sign a budget. And I thank the legislative leaders who did an outstanding job, both the Senate President and Speaker and colleagues. We had to land a budget in the middle of complete chaos coming out of Washington. Along the lines, if I understood Robert correctly, of a lot of the cuts that are now more than threatened. They're likely, including huge cuts in Medicaid, meaningful cuts in SNAP or food stamps and other areas. Robert mentioned block grants, et cetera. And these are they're phased in largely in future years, which is another complication. Not only were we trying to figure out where the bill, the so-called big beautiful bill, my God, what a name for this awful bill. But we're trying to figure out where that was landing as we're trying to get the budget done and signed, but also factoring in that a lot of the impacts are in some cases years down the road. So the sad truth is, we cannot be, no state has the wall of money that can back and fill what the federal government is pulling out, and New Jersey's no exception. It would wipe out that surplus, the rainy day fund, Nancy, we talked about at the beginning, which you rightfully asked me to put into basic terms. That would be wiped out overnight. So can we do things at the edges? I think the answer is at the edges. I got a lot of credit for restoring funding to Planned Parenthood. When I first became governor, the Governor Christie had taken a zero for his time in office. Do you know what that costs? $8 million a year. We got a lot of credit. I'm happy for the credit, but it was $8 million.
Yeah.
This is $8 to $12 billion. And what it means, Nancy and Robert, it means sadly, and this pains me to say this, particularly in such a high value state as we are, a high caring state as we are, people will go without. We think 350,000 folks currently Medicaid eligible will be taken off the rolls. And Nancy, you and I have talked about, we did some roundtables in a couple of the congressional districts of folks we thought were persuadable. By the way, each of the 3 Republican congressmen voted for this bill.
Right.
And we had folks who were on Medicaid at roundtables. And the notion, for instance, of work requirements or whatever their phrase is laughable given the people that I was sitting with. There's no way in God's green earth these people. One guy said he wanted to work, and we made a big deal out of that. No one else could.
Yeah.
So this is an awful bill, and it will have a huge impact on our society. And we won't be, we're not unique, but we're not immune.
All right, let's try to squeeze in one more question from social media. We have David Matau with us. What do you have, David?
Governor Joy from Spotswood says, Governor Murphy, what is the status of the rent control cap bill? That's S-2953. This is vitally important to your senior constituents living on fixed incomes. We need help to be able to remain in our homes.
Was it Joyce or Joy?
Joy.
I will ask, again, I'll ask Emmy Quispe, Tyler, to give Joyce a shout. If it's the bill, I believe it is, I signed it. We did a modest veto to tweak it a little bit, but we sent it back to the legislature, and they, to their enormous credit, immediately passed that version, and it's law. So if it's the same bill that I'm thinking of, this is in the books. It's a statute, it's law, and God willing, it'll bring the relief that she is looking for. But I'll make sure Tyler and I will make sure Emmy Quispe follows up with her.
We're running out of time, but we have a good question from a caller. So I'm just going to, because it'll be quicker, I'm going to summarize what Marshall in Carlstadt wanted to ask, which is that on June 5th, the governor announced a credit for electric payers, and low-income people could get, there it is, could get more. Haven't found info since the announcement. What's the status of that? So this is help for people who are having trouble with their electric bills, because as everyone knows, electric rates are soaring and everybody's bill has gone up.
Yeah, Marshall, again, Dennis probably won't speak to me tomorrow, but I'm going to ask Dennis Zeveloff to follow up with Marshall. So this, we announced, if it's the same announcement, which I think it is, we announced the historic amount of money for one-time relief on soaring electric bills of over $430 million. And if you're a low-income earner, you get a bigger rebate than you do if you're everybody else, but everyone will get something back. And Marshall, you'll get that relief in the fall, I believe, beginning in September. I'll make sure Dennis follows up with you. The electric providers themselves, to their credit, announced a step where they're going to space out the premium that people are going to be paying in these incredibly hot months, and space that out and give people more of a runway to pay their bills. And the other thing is we're pounding away on PJM, which is the regional consortium of states that's been around for over 100 years and on paper makes sense, but they've got 1,600 power projects in their backlog, including 79 in New Jersey that they have not approved. And back to an earlier discussion, when you're in a supply-demand imbalance like we have in housing, or we do right now in power, largely for good reasons. Jersey's hot. More people living here than ever before, working than ever before, businesses in operation than ever before.
More data centers that are sucking up all of that electricity.
More data centers, not just in New Jersey, I might add. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people are coming here, staying here, planting their flag here, but they need power. And it's, Nancy, you and I talked about, why would you shut off the offshore wind program that this federal administration has done when that program could have powered 1.5 million homes in New Jersey?
Yeah. And what's going to happen with AI coming in? And we're going to, like, as our affordability reporter in New Jersey, Mike Hayes, said to me, is grandma subsidizing Google? Like, are ratepayers subsidizing these big AI plants?
No, we can't let that happen. And I'd never heard that phrase before, but I have to start using it. Please
It's pretty good, right?
It's a good one. We are players. We are going to be AI players. Frankly, we just got rated top 3 in the country for using AI in our governmental selves. That's where we're going to be huge. We'll have some big data centers for sure. CoreWeave is an incredible company headquartered in Jersey. We'll have talent at the Princeton AI hub that
I can see my electric bill going up by the minute. The more you talk, I see that bill going up and up. I'm afraid we have to leave it there. You've been listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WHYY, and WNYC. Thanks to the whole team. I'm Nancy Solomon. This is Ask Governor Murphy. What happened to my music? It stopped early.